But let's talk about vintage equipment in its own right. I'm 68 years old. Some of this I bought as a hobbyist, as a youngster, and then later on sold it for many years. And one of the things that I find remarkably not understandable is the fascination with buying 50 or 60-year-old equipment, because the price, I think the prices for most of the used equipment is ridiculous. We're talking about equipment that has capacitors that are shot. Many of the resistors were carbon film. They're way out of spec. So you get into, okay, upgrading and replacing the caps and replacing the resistors. And of course, it says nothing about what's going on with the old copper traced pots that are in these units, or switch toggles. You can clean them up, but they're not spec by any stretch of the imagination. I can only really see a couple reasons for buying vintage equipment. For us old guys, it's kind of like, you know, trying to reinvent the moment when you smell perfume on a girl for the first time. You're looking for memories of the past when life was simpler, so to speak, or you thought so. But it's really not about performance. You know, if that's your goal of reliving an old memory, well, that's why antique stores exist and why they charge so much money for what most people would put in the garbage can or have in a compactor. And I'll buy it because it's your money. Spend it how you wish. But if you're talking about trying to build a really decent stereo system today by going out and buying something that, you know, it might be a Sony or it might be a Marantz, and you're paying really large dollars for it, you know, I'm sorry to tell you, but you've got a nice blue light special like Kmart, but it's not performance, folks. There's much better equipment out there made by many manufacturers. Now, there are some people who buy this equipment because it's dedicated to stereo. Well, I get that. And I also get the fact that many of them have phono stages in it and people want to spin vinyl. Valid points. But again, there is very good stereo equipment out there without having to go into something that's 50 years old, whose life expectancy is already, well, you're basically at the death age of the equipment. You're going to have a problem. And it's not even at spec. It's not even like it was 50 years ago. So I'm sorry, you're not capturing the past, so to speak. And some of the past isn't worth capturing anyway. And I've purchased some of this equipment over the last 10 years to try to understand what people's fascination is with it. And I'll be really honest, as somebody who's been in the industry for 40 years, I don't get it. There are some special products out there. There are some personal favorites of mine that I'll recommend because they are unique in performance. The other thing you have to understand with the way things were done in the past is you had some companies that had superb design teams, but they would be concentrated on one category of product only. So they might have been extremely good at building tuners, but when you put them together on receivers, well, they really weren't receiver people. They were tuner people, so to speak. Sony did this with some of their products. I know others did. And that's just the truth. It's just the way it is. But even as you look at something of this vintage, you're also dealing with, you know, basically lamp cords for your power cable, okay? So that's very current limiting in its very own right. Then you're stuck with things like maybe you have screw terminals, okay, which are okay, but a lot of them had spring-loaded clips, so you know, I don't care what gauge of wire, what distance you're running, you're basically getting a contact of about a 20 gauge wire. While we're on it, when we're talking about some of the older product and these sort of power cords, one of the things you have to be very careful about is that 50-year-old lamp cord is brittle. It's notorious for, at this age, for cracking and peeling. This one is, and it's still holding together, but it can actually happen at the back of the receiver. Now, this is a fire hazard. So if you're going to look at this stuff, that's fine. But, look at the thing that's actually powering it, so you don't wind up, losing everything you ever bought because you got something with a fire hazard. These are all the things that my industry learned over the years, is how to do things better. And as I said, there are some special little gems out there, but as a general rule of thumb, if you want a good audio system, look at stuff that's far more current in design and ideas. If you're into stereo, I'd simply do agree that stay with something that's designed for stereo. It might be an integrated amplifier. Most people aren't even listening to FM anymore, so why pay for it? They may be streaming. That's cool, but buy an integrated amplifier that's designed for stereo. As I said, I've seen some receivers go for $1,200, $2,000, some for $3,000 from 50 years ago. Well, I don't get it. I really don't. If you're talking about love for music, then buy stuff that really plays music well. If you want to buy something that looks cool, fine, whatever. You can buy a vase, flowers. I don't care. They look great too, but it's not in vintage equipment, okay? So what you want to do with your money, it's your money. You're free to spend it as you wish, but and it's not for me to decide that. But it's not something that I would really, on a general rule, recommend. So if you want to email me or contact me through our website, or attach questions to this video, that's fine. I'll answer some of them. But in general, I just don't see it as a good value if you're into music.